The future of talk is here. Power 102 Digital.
Hello,
This
hello.
is Hard Talk, Power 102 Digital Monday. Today we have as our host, Karen Nunez Tesheira, and of course our special guest, Dr. Roger Hussain. We are waiting for Karen to link up with us. Surprising that she isn't here with us as yet, Dr. Hussain. But how are you in the meantime? Are you okay? Dr. Hussain?
Yeah, hi, good, yeah, I'm here.
Yes, nice.
Am I on or am I only talking to you?
No. Well, I'm standing by for Karen. She should be here. I was just talking to
So
her.
are we on the air or is it only me and you alone chatting?
No, we are live on the live. We're streaming
Okay, that's
live on
good.
Facebook and live on
Okay,
YouTube. So we're
okay,
just
thanks.
awaiting
Good evening.
Karen to appear on the set here now, and we'll get off with the show off and running. So let's hope that she's ready and on the set. But everything is fine with you. How's the Christmas treating you, man?
Good. But a lot of work. What do you do? You roll with the punches and you get the work done.
I hear you. Well, same here. And we people like us, we have a mental part to play when it comes to labor and hard
Yes.
work. Everything is a mental thing, So we are hoping that it will ease up at some point in time where we too can have a rest and enjoy the vacation itself. So let me
I hear.
just share the numbers that people can join us with. You can link up with us on 222-8255, 222-8255, 612-8255, and 866-525-1099. That toll-free number again, 866-525-1099. We are also taking your opinions, your calls, and your messages via WhatsApp. And our WhatsApp number is 318-1021. So we are just standing by for our host, Karen Nunez, to join us here. Of course, surprising that she's not on us yet. I know she's the lady, she knows.
So in the meantime, I don't know
All right,
how
here she
you
is.
want to run it. Do you want me to field one or two little?
Yeah, here she is.
There's Karen.
Yes, here she
As
is.
beautiful as ever.
Thank you, but I was having a problem getting online actually. Every now and again, for whatever reason, I don't know, my computer drops. But anyhow, we are here, and thank you so much, Dr. Hussain, for more than being on time and even embarrassing me. And good afternoon to our listeners all over the world. We go digital, and I think I got a little bit of pull up the other day for saying, you didn't say salutations, but I'm saying it now. Salutations to every single listener. We value your presence, and especially having Dr. Hussain agreeing to come on, because we know he's a very busy man. I know he's a very busy man, and I take great pleasure in having him on this afternoon. And of course, David McIntyre, with whom I could not do this show. But we don't have that amount of time that I would like. I wish we did with Dr. Hussain. So I'm going to go straight to giving a very abbreviated bio of Dr. Hussain, which is, I think we all know who he is. He's one of our leading economists. He's the head of the Department of Economics in University of Western East St. Augustine. I will have to say, because I am a graduate of UWE, getting a first class honors is no mean feat. I can tell anybody that. It is no mean feat. Just in case for those who don't understand what a first class honors means, it means a lot. You could have a class of maybe 200, and of them, maybe you're lucky if you get 5 or 10 with a first class degree. So that just gives you an indication. And that is why we are not surprised that he has both his master's and PhD from the University of Cambridge. Of course, that needs no introductions to anyone here listening. And he has specialized in a number of areas. I'm pulling them up now. And we're not surprised, because he does speak on them on several occasions. Talks about international trade with emphasis on the Dutch disease. I'm not going to try and pronounce this word, so I'm not even going to say it. Immigration theory, regional integration, small states and their vulnerabilities. So because I have limited time with Dr. Hussain today, and please, anyone, you can send your, not going to speak out at this point in time, certainly do what you did last week and what you continue to do. Send your messages through to David McIntyre and we will answer them. I have a feeling after Dr. Hussain has left us. So, Dr. Hussain, I'm going to use your great teaching capacity to our listeners because this show really is more about information and hopefully increasing our knowledge base and our analysis. And so there were three areas I had which are topical, and I would have wanted you to address it for the listening audience. First, I give you three of them. One of them is the issue of devaluation. That has been a hot topic for God knows how long. Devalue or not to devalue. And it came back on, and it was one of the symposium subjects that you had with three other invitees. Devaluation, or should we float the dollar, or as we have done in Trinidad, in managed float. So if you could give us an indication why, what are the choices, and why what is your recommendation? And then what I think people need to have a better understanding is of the not only the inflation, but more important, debt. Because I think you're one of the first, if I can recall, who spoke about since 2015, Trinidad and Tobago's growth has contracted out of all the Caribbean countries, the most 17.5%. And so I want people to understand what you mean by that in terms of the implications of debt and, of course, its implications on our foreign exchange. So the three things are the first, we're starting, of course, with the topic that everybody talks about, devaluation, growth and debt. Maybe we can look at that together. And, of course, our foreign exchange position. What is your views on any of those subjects? And I'll let you have the floor for the few time that we have you with us.
No problem. Thank you very much, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here. I try to avoid some of these sessions, but with you, it's difficult to say no. So I'm here.
Oh.
So let me start with the economic. I wrote down the four things you mentioned. Well, three. You had mentioned one previously on employment, and I will try to see if I could put in small comments on each one. Let me start with growth. So our economy, just this morning in preparation for coming on to this program with you, I made a check as to the situation with regard to our economic growth. That is simply because we have had the October 2023 version of the World Economic Outlook. It recently came out. So I downloaded data for the IMF October 2021, IMF October 2022, IMF April 2023, and IMF October 2023. So four periods. The IMF changes its forecast twice for the year in April and October of each year. So I did 3 October 2021, 2022, and 2023, and 1 April 2023 of this year, and I compare them. And what surprised me, and I spend a lot of time, as you know, Karen, looking at the Trinidad and Tobago economy. I am in Trinidad, I am not abroad, and because I choose to be here, and therefore I spend a lot of time trying to see if in some small way I could add some value that may be useful in terms of identifying some trends, some gaps that may be useful to policymakers. And one of the things I noticed, even with all my experience, is I was surprised to see that in every single forecast, starting from 2021, October 2021, October 2022, April 2023, and then October 2023, the IMF lowered Trinidad and Tobago growth performance. So if you look at the actual, the IMF growth data, I then modify the time series to make 2015 the base year. In October 2023, in other words, the most recent data puts us at 20 points lower than in 2015. Whereas if we had used the April 2023 data, it would have been 17 points. Or if we had used the IMF October 2022 data, it would have been 14 points. So the IMF is as it receives new data from CSO and plugs it into its macroeconomic model, is lowering and lowering and lowering our GDP growth performance for the various years, so that in
So what is he? I don't want to be rude, but because you're an economist, and this is like nothing to just say that. But for the listener, to let them understand the importance of why it is important for an economy to grow, or why is it this contraction you're seeing? And by the way, I did get what you probably did prepare, and I did have the 2023 figures, and I spoke at an event on on Saturday, but I limited myself to up to 2022. But for people to understand what it means when you say the economy did not grow, because think if you are in the government and listening to you talk, I mean, why are you saying that when?
No problem. So I will do that.
4.1%.
So the first thing I want to do is tell the listeners that the growth performance of the Trinidad and Tobago economy using the latest IMF numbers is much worse than we thought.
And why is that bad? This is what I want you to explain to you to understand.
No, so I'm going to explain that. Why is that bad? Well, if you had $100 in 2015, Karen,
yeah,
and you now only have $80, then that's a problem for you in order for you to go about and get everything that you want. So in other words, let's assume that you go to Massy stores and you buy only $1 items. Let's assume things were $1.
yes.
In 2015, you could buy 100 $1 items. So you
Yes.
go home and you cook some food and everybody happy. In 2023, December, as we speak, you could only buy 80 of those items. And if it is on 100, you were borderline poor, let's say.
Yes.
On 100 items, therefore with 80, you are definitely poor.
Right.
So
This is what I wanted you to understand.
It's important to understand economic growth, especially when you remove the effect of inflation, because it gives you an idea of how much goods and services your family can get at the end of the month.
Okay, so then I'm going to ask you again, and this is not for me, this is for your listeners, because I want them to appreciate the data that you're giving them. You said, especially when you remove the effect of inflation. So let's give you a simple example for the man in the street. Good example, and Marcy will be happy with you, by the way. I'm using them as an example. But let's use that and then factor in inflation. Let us see how that inflation now affects that 100 items that you were able to purchase for each for $1. That now you go back to Massy this year, and that same $100, you could only purchase 80 of 80 items. So if you were bad, it got worse. How does inflation now affect what you just said?
Right. So let's deal with the effect of inflation. Suppose in turn you had $100 in 2015.
Right.
And you could buy 100 $1 items in 2015. In 2023, if each of these $1 items were to be priced at $125, then you would not be able to buy 100 because you would have to have $125.
Correct.
But you only have 100. So you could only buy 4/5, which is 80%.
You can't
So
buy it.
you would be poorer in terms of the number of items you take home. And what matters from an economic point of view is the number of items you put on the table at home.
And for people's point of view now.
Right. And from a people's point of view, what you want to know is after you see the price increase, what you could afford. So if you could have bought 100 $1 item, but each item now went to $1.25 and you could only buy 80, then you are taking only 80 products to your family. You are poorer.
Unless
so inflation makes you poorer, other things constant.
Okay, so let me go to the inflation a little bit, because you see, what I really do want what people have said to us is that, when they listen to us, they want to be able, when people go in parliament and they use all these big things, they get lost, and it doesn't mean anything to them. It just says a big fancy words. And we're just trying to break it down for people to
no problem at all.
know what it means to them. So now we understand now. So therefore, what you're saying is that our economy, so but it may not look so. Let me just ask you this. It may not look so. It may look like, say, in 2015, I'm being the devil's advocate. In 2015, you own a company called Trinidad and Tobago, and your company was earning, let's just say, $2 million. Okay? 2023 is earning $2.5 million. How could you tell me that the economy did not grow?
Right. So when I remove the effect of inflation,
Explain that then.
right. So for example, no problem. So for example, I could give you, you could have $100. Again, I'm using simple
Yes.
convenient numbers. You could have $100 in 2015 and be able to buy $101 items. Simple. You follow that?
Yes.
In 2023, you could have $200. But if each item were to move from $1 to $3, you would only be able to buy 66.
Right. So on the face of it, the reason that's important, it is important for people to understand, is that when someone says to them, the economy, look at us where we were in 2015, we had X amount GDP, but look where we are today. On the face of it, it would look as that, what stupidness you talking about? I'm making more money. But in truth and in fact, what you are saying to the listener, is that because your ability with that three, even though it's more money in your hand, really, in fact, because the cost of goods have gone up, and it means that your salary has not gone up at the same point in time. It means that your purchasing power has been eroded, which will mean that the cost of living for you has gone up, and your standard
of living gone
down.
So just a minor correction. Even if your salary increases, because we did increase salary from $100 to $200. Once the inflation rate increases at a faster pace, you would be able to only get less goods.
I understand. Now,
and that applies to every public servant basically listening to here. You know, those are, if you look at the numbers, don't listen to me. Look at the numbers. The numbers would tell you that the rate of inflation since 2014, the overall inflation rate from 2014 to 2023 has outstripped the growth of wages. And that is why people are looking here and there to get an increase in wages.
Right. So this is what I was going to now bring up, because all this is using your knowledge to sort of educate the man in the street. And this brings me to an issue that I brought up, but I know that you are far better able to explain it than I could possibly. And even then, even my explanation probably would need some teaching itself, learning itself. And that is that you usually find, now this is my understanding, I remember years ago when the then governor of the central bank said that the inflation rate had reached 10%, and we were going down a slippery slope. Right. And that was because he was saying the economy was overheating. And
that would have been Ewart Williams.
Ewart Williams, yes.
Right.
Okay. What I am asking is this. It seems to me, based on the last figures I had from the Economic Bulletin, which I'm sure you have a more updated data than I do, but I'm just depending on that. It said that the headline inflation, which you can explain, and then the food inflation, because everybody had to eat. I want to know, why is it that both of them seem to be so fairly high in an economy that does not seem to be growing or expanding, or you seeing activity? Because it seems to me when you have low inflation, unless you have your economy under real good control, right? But if you don't have it under real good control, you usually find high inflation goes with a situation where the economy is in trouble, where people have limited, their income is not adequate, and prices and the cost of living, the cost of buying, importing especially, has gone up. But in our economy, why is the inflation, it seems to me, to be so fairly high, given that the growth in the economy is not apparently occurring? If you could
No, well,
explain.
in this case, so one of the things that the government did do from 2016 to 2020 is they kept inflation under decent control. Our inflation rate was very low in that time period. In 2022 and 2023, however, because of a variety of shocks and 2021, including the crisis in China and therefore the situation with COVID and the cost of importing, and then the problems with goods coming out of China, followed by the Russian-Ukraine war, the cost of importing increased, and because we have a country that is heavily dependent on imports, it filtered into the economy and our inflation rates grew. Apart from that, our food production, the amount of workers, going into food production in Trinidad and Tobago has been in the decline from 2000 to 2023. I'm taking a long way view. And as food production, as employment in the agricultural sector decreases and food production decreases, it means what would happen is that you would end up with a situation where domestic food prices rise. And then in November last year, I believe we had a very big flood. And that would have led to accentuation of the food price situation. So there are a number of reasonable explanations as to why both the food price inflation and hence the overall inflation, of which food prices account for, I believe, about 17% or 20% around there, everything increased. The long and short, though, is that what we really need in the Trinidad and Tobago economy, given that we have a certain degree of moderate, not very high inflation, is we really need economic growth. We really need for real GDP growth to take place in the economy so people can have more money. And even if we had a 1%, 2%, 3% inflation rate, if we get a 4%, 5% real GDP growth, we can afford more things than the inflation rate takes out of our hands, and we will be better off. The problem in 2023, and again, let us be fair, economic growth did return to the Trinidad and Tobago economy according to the IMF data in 2022 and 2023. My concern is, Karen, and I did take a look at the data myself, is that the growth is taking place in areas that utilize a lot of foreign exchange and don't generate foreign exchange. And what you need growth that generates foreign exchange, because our external debt is about 5.6 to 5.7 billion US, if I remember correctly. The stock reserves is now down to about 6.2. And yes, all the debt is not due at one point in time. They would due at different point in time in the future. But if we take a simplistic approach, the ratio of external debt to international reserves is drifting close to 1. And so
is what you want? Is how close is it?
It is drifting close to 1. I'm going to guess and say it's about 0.85. My point is that what we need to generate more of is, yes, we take the economic growth and we say thank you. We need to generate economic growth in areas that stimulate the inflow of foreign exchange and do other things to stimulate the inflow of foreign exchange. And I would quickly identify, if you allow me, several areas. One, our inflow of foreign direct investment is not the best. It was much greener and boisterous in previous years. I don't know if the crime situation is a deterrent. I mean, we have a murder level that for 2023 could probably end up, and I'm making a simple linear extrapolation, probably about 563. That's too much.
550 now.
No, it's 541.
Well, somebody then
checked,
gave me wrong.
Yeah, I checked before I came on. But the point, if it reaches about 563, it would be the 2 highest consecutive years since recorded data. So I looked at the CSO data. It started in 1966 for homicides. 2023 and 2022 back-to-back in consecutive years will be the highest 2 years together ever since we had recorded data. And maybe it is putting a dampening influence on some form of foreign direct investment, and the Minister of National Security and the relevant policymakers would have to look at that. The second thing is our remittance inflow. I looked at it. It's very low in comparison to other CARICOM sister states. And maybe if we do some more foundational work there, we could increase the inflow of remittances, which, in my understanding of the facts, would be very useful in a country where we have foreign exchange issues at the commercial bank counter. And the third area that would be useful is tourism. Our tourism inflows has fallen considerably over the years. And I would love to see a 3-year plan that leads to a doubling of the tourism inflows into this country, and a situation where you don't have taxi drivers going on strike 5 minutes before a tourism boat reaches the country, where we could get for the people, the small businesses that keep asking and clamoring for more foreign exchange, where we could get more foreign exchange. Of course, I didn't mention manufacturing, Karen, because I think that the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturing Association has done a very good job from 2017 to the present in increasing production and export activity within the manufacturing sector. So we just need to encourage that sector to push more.
Can I give you some pushback a little bit on some of what you said? Not a pushback, but a point of view. I remember when I was in government and we were looking at countries in terms of how they got their GDP, their gross domestic product, how were they able to sustain it, how they got to that level. And Guyana, of course, that's no longer the case. Their growth rate is 400 and something percent. There's no country near them. But Guyana and Jamaica in particular had very high levels of remittances. And in fact, when you looked at what made up their GDP, a large percentage of their GDP was made up of remittances. Whereas in Trinidad at the time, we had what we call reverse remittances, where we were the ones sending money out rather than receiving funding. So it's probably a very new concept, and it's a very unfortunate concept that we have to, unfortunately, at least in the short and medium term, help to increase our GDP position by using the mechanism of remittances, because the United States economy seems to be doing pretty well, maybe not so much the European Union, but definitely the United States. With regard to the foreign exchange point, I just want to clarify for persons, because I know Dr. Let me not quote our economist because I may have the wrong economist, but I do know, consistent with what you said, that when you look at your foreign exchange drop from about 10 point something billion in 2014, or more than that, 11, to nearly half in a matter of 6 years, I don't think people recognize that a lot of that foreign exchange reserves there is debt, because when you cannot meet your fiscal, which is what people may not realize, every single year when the government has to come to present its budget, it's looking for funding to fund that year, that fiscal year. And when its revenue is, as has been the case, has been less than its expenditure in nearly every single year, it has to get that money from somewhere, and it does it by borrowing. And to borrow, who is going to lend? Who are the bondholders? People who they borrow from. They want their money paid in US dollars. So just as what you said, Dr. Hussain, the money may not be due tomorrow because those bondholders is like for 5-10 years, but a lot of that money in the foreign exchange reserves is made up of debt, which people do not fully recognize. The other thing I just wanted to mention, because I did some work with the BVI, and when I did some work many, many years ago, I was asked to look at the economy of the BVI. You know that issue with cruise ships. The cruise ships are about the worst thing you want to do to develop your tourism sector. The reason being that a lot of these cruise ships, some people go on cruise ships just to eat food, you know. You know that? I mean, I've been on cruise ships myself. I didn't go do that, but I see some people that all they did is they went there to eat food, right? And the point is, also, a lot of the cruise ship owners tie in before they come on land with a provider, tourist operator in the country already, so that the taxi operators who come in there to the port, there are very few opportunities for them, because tied into the price that you paid for the tourist package is the tourist operator thing, which has already been paid for upfront. And in fact, just one last thing with the BVI. In the BVI, it was so bad because they have a problem with water. People do not come there. They don't come there to eat because they eat it on the plane, on the ship. They spend a few hours and they go back on the ship and they go in and eat, number one. Number two, the operators were tied already to the cruise ship owners, so that most of the operators, they did not have to pay additional money to be taken on a tour. So I just want to say that if we go in the, I 100% think that tourism is a way for foreign exchange earning, 100%. But I would warn very strongly against using the cruise ship. And my final point, and this is really to ask you this, because I have heard other economists, and that's why I'm going to ask you to talk about evaluation finally, because I know you don't have, I have limited time with you, so I'm going to ask you, please address the issue of the evaluation. One of the things that they've argued is when you break down the percentage of the non-energy manufacturing sector, because the manufacturing sector includes the energy, but you take out the energy, in the downstream now. So you take out the non-energy and it's just the manufacturing sector alone. When you look at that, so much of that is made up of beverages, foodstuffs, and that sort of thing. And much of the product to package it, in my understanding, and much of the pocket is imported. So that where they're really making money for the manufacturing sector, I may be wrong. There's 2-3 things I understand. One, the price of water, the price of electricity, and in a very curious way, I'm not saying that's true for Trinidad, but they have said that when the manufacturing sector in any country believes that it can lay back on its laurels because they have control over the regional market for those reasons, they have a competitive advantage, which of course includes the value of our TT dollar to the US dollar. The manufacturer himself does not have that level of productivity that he himself should be encouraging. I'm not saying that's true for Trinidad. I'm just saying that has been said. So I just wanted to bring that on the table. And all your points are very valid points. But why do you think, and also when you talk about food, I have to say this. The central bank governor about 2 years ago said that we are importing over $5 billion in food in this country. And yet, how much it is now? 8? Oh my God. It's 8 now? And that was 2 years ago he said that, right? And you are right. Why are we importing all this food? I go in the same, let me not call any store, but my God, they have things there they have to throw away and have expiry date. You know how much thing they put expiry date and they package together and tell you to buy it because the expiry date reached. They have things that freezing that, who buying it? Why are you bringing it in? I just don't understand why you bring it in. We don't have a tourism sector. What are we doing with those products in this country? And what the agro industry, if I could just say that in Holland, or the Netherlands as it is called, more than 1/3 of their country is underwater. The Rhine River flows through it. So they have a huge issue with flooding, which they have been able to manage through their various councils. And do you know that Holland or Netherlands, from which the Dutch disease term is coined, that they are the second largest global exporter of food in the world, second only to the United States, and they're the size of Maryland in the United States and have a huge flooding issue. We have a Ministry of Agriculture. We have a Faculty of Agriculture. There is no excuse, and that feeds into our food inflation, the cost of living, your standard of living, and using up foreign exchange in all of these foreign franchises, which we do not need, that increase our non-communicable disease and our price, our health costs. So I have to add that to what you said. So Dr. Hussein, having given my little um, insight on that, I really want to hear your views on the argument with devaluation, to devalue or not to devalue. What are the pros? What are the cons, especially in the context of Trinidad and Tobago?
Thanks, Karen. Karen, I will take 1 minute before I start. I will tell you that let us use the cruise ships that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my view, the foreign exchange situation is so bad.
Mm-hmm.
If we get any extra US dollars we get from there, we should welcome it. That's my simple point. And it would do, it would help in a multiplicity of ways our small entrepreneurs, so that they will probably be able to sell directly to the cruise ship, make some US dollars, and therefore be less dependent on the bank. It's possible, and that's the context in which I show that point.
I agree.
As concerns manufacturing, even though the growth is, so I checked the manufacturing sector, the majority of growth, as you said, is coming from food, drinks, and tobacco. Even so, wherever we get economic activity that could create employment and generate some more foreign exchange, we take that. That's how I see the Trinidad and Tobago economy. Good afternoon, Karen. How are you? What are we doing for foreign exchange? That's the way I see Trinidad and Tobago.
Desperation. That's what I see when you're talking that talk.
So I think I commend the TTMA for the strides on manufacturing, together with the Ministry of Trade, and whoever it is pushing the tourism effort. Even though the cruise ship, it is well known, is not a big money earner, we need the money. And so whatever we get, we try to capture as much as possible. We do our surveys. We try to see, as these tourists come on shore, what they can buy, and we capitalize on it. So comment specifically now to the valuation. So I looked at the capacity for import substituting industrialization. It's 8% in 2022.
What do you mean by that? Because that's a big mouthful that you understand, I understand, but I'm telling you, you're risking to want to understand.
Right.
Too.
So let me break that down a little bit, and let me say it differently altogether. So should we devalue? Should we devalue depends in large measure on whether or not, when we do devalue the currency, and for example, change the price of a US dollar from 6.79 TT to say $8 TT for 1 US. It depends upon whether or not that change will help us produce some of the goods that we currently import. So, and a beautiful example in this regard that perhaps started around the 1980s, when we were scarce on foreign exchange in another time period, is, I hope I get the name correct, Universal Foods in Point Lisas, where we now have our sunshine cornflakes and so on. And I think that has worked reasonably well. The amount of firms like that, I am seeing the amount of substitutable products out of our total imports we could do in 2022. When I looked at the numbers, it worked out to something like 8%. Whereas if we had done the experiment in 2000, it would have been something closer to 20%.
Okay.
Now, the point I want to make, though, is, and this is why should we devalue the Trinidad and Tobago dollar when we have about 80,000 Venezuelan immigrants here? Now, if you do a column by column theoretical exercise, the surge in the labor force is equal to a devaluation without changing the value of the currency. So let me ask you, Karen, what is the objective of a devaluation? To make the goods you sell abroad cheaper to foreigners, and also to produce more of that goods as well. Now, with the Venezuelans, if one tremendous error we are doing is we are using what I call a laissez-faire policy. So where are the Venezuelans working, Karen? Where do you see them work?
Dr. Hussain, one topic I said I was not going to raise with you is that contentious issue of the Venezuelans. But I will not comment, because I want you to continue and make your points. So
I am saying to you, from an economic point of view, they have highly proximate values. But the challenge with our experiment with the Venezuelans coming here is we have only registered about 6,525 out of a possible 80,000. Now, Because of that, those who are unregistered tend to work where? In bars, in casinos, in construction, in places that use a lot of foreign exchange and don't generate foreign exchange. And if you look at the GDP data, the review of the economy 2023 that came out this year with the with the budget speech, you would see that the size of the non-tradable sector, which I have excluded manufacturing, I have excluded energy, and I've excluded accommodation, has grown. The size of the non-tradable sector has grown. And if you check the correlation between the size of GDP in the non-tradable sector and imports, you would see it's highly correlated. In other words, part of the problem we are experiencing with the heavy demand on foreign exchange is because of the structure of the economy. Now, if we were to intervene and insist that every immigrant worker here were to be registered, then we increase the probability of a registered worker not having to hide and work in a bar or in a casino in the back room. They can now go out and work freely in manufacturing or in service exports or in agricultural exports and change the structure of the economy, reduce the pressure on demand for foreign exchange, and even generate some foreign exchange. There are so many equivalents. I'm actually writing a paper on it, by the way, Kevin, that show that it is, in fact...
Can I critique it?
Of course.
But I think I have much to say on it. I want to ask you one thing then. I understand everything you're saying, but I want to ask you this. This is probably my and this is really a broad question. What I think concerns me more than anything else, the labor force participation rate, which in Trinidad is pretty low. And so that's why you have an unemployment rate that is so low. Now, I do know it includes from 11 to 64. People, when they reach 60, they retire. So that's a whole, and you did a graph, which I saw, showing how the aging population is growing far greater than the young population. And of course, if you're 15 years of age, it's more than likely you're going to be in school. And among the labor force participation rate, you do not include people who are institutionalized, whether it's in jail or mentally, nor do you include people in the military. I know they are not included. But a 54% is worrying. And so you know what my concern is, as a Trinbagonian, is this. We are a tiny little country, and there are countries like United States, there are non-CARICOM Latin American countries. And I want to know, why are we not focusing on why it is that we are not able to provide living wages for 20,000 CPEP URP workers? Why are not we doing more to address that 54% labor force participation rate among our own people? And I'm not saying not the registered people. Why are we not putting the effort on them? Rather than, because guess what? Mr. Maduro is putting emphasis on his people. America pays enough emphasis on their people. And our government has to put its emphasis on our people. And I just can't understand why it is that we seem to be the greatest advocate rather than looking to see what can we do to deal with a labor force participation rate there. What is this that is not there, because we're paying a price on another side, not only working in the bars and so on. The NIS, going in the hospital, they don't pay health surcharge. I know people who worked in hospital and they would walk in there as if they own Port Spring General Hospital. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. They walk in there like if that is their hospital, take the seat up and jump on a boat and go back home, because they got a message that Trinidad wants Dragon Field. And if Trinidad wants Dragon Field, well, however the arrangement is, that's part of the arrangement. So I have no problem with the registered one, but my concern is putting so much emphasis on them. How about us? I'm trying to focus on us.
And you are not wrong at all. You are perfectly correct. And the point, though, is excluding the Venezuelans. That's why repeatedly we have asked for the Minister of Labor to do a detailed understanding of why our labor force participation rate amongst both male and female, are so low compared to other countries. We do not know if they are joining gangs.
I can give you one. I can give you one. Because when I did a walkabout, I can give you one example and maybe anecdotal, but I think it could be used across the board. This was a woman and she's very angry. That's beside the point. But the thing was her husband had died. She had 3 little children. And she was going up the road to beat up somebody because the man looking at her 11-year-old girl and talking sex talk to her. So she's telling me that she's getting $1,750 from the government. She cannot afford to leave home and leave her children, especially during the holidays, because she has nobody to see after them because they will come and rape her children. And at 1750, cannot buy a parrot on a stick. What are we doing about her? She is one of us. Take care of our own.
Karen, in all fairness again, our transfers and subsidies is very, very high. In fact, I looked at the data and our transfers and subsidies as a percent of GDP.
What's a transfer?
Pardon?
What is a transfer? HSF is a transfer, you know.
Yes, but excluding HSF,
they're not only HSF, the IDF is a transfer, you know.
Yeah,
so
but okay.
Same transfer. Just talk subsidies alone now. Because transfers include the
you make a number of transfers to state-owned enterprises, you make a number of transfers to households, you make a number of transfers to a range of entities. The point is, in comparison to other states, ours is much higher than other states. And what I am saying to you is maybe our high level of transfers and subsidies triggered something called a backward bending labor supply curve. It decreased the inclination towards work for some because they had adequate fallback. Now, having said
very
that,
unfair. Very unfair to see that.
No, I'm making a statistical comment, and that's what the data shows. It's a statistical comment.
All right.
No, having said that, Karen, you are not incorrect in saying that the low labor force participation rate is a problem. You are not incorrect in suggesting that it needs to be thoroughly understood and studied in order to understand what are the drivers behind us having one of the lowest labor force participation rate in the CARICOM. I think it's only second to Haiti, and I think it's third to Haiti and Guyana. All other countries are above us. Bahamas is about 20 percentage points higher than us. And what the fact is, we need to investigate why, and when we find out why, we can scientifically intervene. We are not doing it. And we have been calling for that about 78 years now. So, and I am not going to guess. I am not into that type of economics.
Right.
We have to conduct a scientific inquiry into the reason and then find having found the reason, then intervene to solve it. It's 5 o'clock though, and I have another meeting.
And one thing I will have to say before you go, that is why, Dr. Hussain, you and I have a problem. Because you see, if you tell me that you have done that study and you have found out the reason and then you have addressed it, and for our people, I understand that. But then when the answer is to tell me these unregistered Venezuelans, by the way, CARICOM, they are not a CARICOM country. And CARICOM has said that they want to reduce our food import bill to 25% by 2025. I know that's a pipe dream.
Karen, it's not so simple. We are a nano
know
state.
it is not, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand.
And we have to go. You see what is happening?
I'm also
you know why we get in trouble? Because they use that word Venezuelan.
Just now. I'm also going to tell you we are a nano state with only 1.5 million people. We need a population closer to 2.4, 2.5 million at a minimum. So I am very, very happy for the Venezuelans, but it must be structured.
Okay, and I do not share your views on that. I'm happy for the registered ones. I want you to deal with our people, and when you deal with our people, then you can tell me about them. Thank you very much, and that is why. Thank you for coming, Dr. Hussain.
Two things in 30 seconds. We could do the both things and benefit even more. And the second thing.
All right, I agree with that.
The second thing, my dear. The second thing, my dear, in the last 15 seconds is I was promoted from doctor to professor.
Listen, I don't think people know what that means. Dr. Hussain.
You will explain it another time.
Okay, I'll explain when you're gone because I don't think people know what that means.
Thanks for having me, Karen.
So much.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, I have to explain. In the British system, just like how I said, well, you get a first class degree. You don't get a first class degree. You can get an upper second, but not a first class. I do not have a first class, clearly. But when you become a professor, very, very few persons are given that designation in our British academic system. In America, everybody's called professor. Everybody's called professor. They make no distinction. It does not have the same meaning. Professorship is a very rigorous process. You are not only assessed by your peers, you are assessed by a university. There's a whole university body that sits and peer reviews your work, and it is not a walkover. And for you to be given the designation of professor, you may find in an entire university department in our system, which is the British system, which in a large extent is exclusionary, I have to say, rather than inclusionary. That's one of the things I have to say. But in any event, when you are given that designation of professor, you have proven your worth academically among your peers, and you stand head above them academically. So it is a great accomplishment, achievement for Professor Dr. Roger Hossain. It is not the same thing as the United States. I have a sister who works in the United States in their academic in their academic thing. She has a PhD and she has achieved a lot. It is true, but everybody's a professor, not in our system. So congratulations to Dr. Hussain. And you see, that's one of the reasons that when it's using, I hope we were going to get to them Venezuelans, but we agree on this.
Yeah.
If you can make the Venezuelans happy, I have a little wink wink, and us, more importantly, no problem. But we don't have time to, and I didn't bring him in for that. I think he has helped us a lot to understand our, the growth position in the country. He got to understand how we arrived at our growth position, why it is what it is, how it is arrived at. He did explain to us how our inflation is arrived at using the dollar, the thing, going to the Massey store, whichever store, and how your buying power is reduced. I think he explained that very well. I think he also explains us the foreign exchange, and a lot of our foreign exchange is tied up in debt. He also recognized that we have to grow many other sectors in our economy to earn foreign exchange, because that is how the shirt I'm wearing, probably the shirt you wearing, the things in my house, probably things in your house, and everybody who listening here today, either it was bought from abroad or partially part of the material to make it came from abroad. Without that US dollar, we simply can't buy even medicine, food. So we have to try to reach a level of food security. And beyond that, we need to be able to do what the big countries did to us for many years. And we must have that confidence in ourselves. If they could take our cocoa and make Cadbury chocolate and we buying it back 20 times more than it took our cocoa from us, why we can't take our cocoa and sell them our own high-end chocolate and make money? Why can't we have the confidence that we could do it? All right, but that's another story. But thank you, Professor Dr. Roger Hossain, and congratulations. And I hope I've done my best to explain the accolades and the level of academic excellence that be being given the designation of professor means in our educational system, which is a British educational system, a little tougher than the American system, but sometimes, maybe that gives you, I shouldn't say this because Harvard and Yale are all highly regarded, but maybe there's a bias on my part, and I'll leave it at that. Leave it at that. So we were joined by Dr. Hossain, who did tell us before, listeners, that he would not be able to stay with us more than until 5 o'clock. And he had told me that since last week. And I did want him to come on because I think the economy is not the economy as some kind of vague concept. It's how you're able to put a meal on the table, how you're able to pay your rent, pay your mortgage, send your children to school, pay for their clothes. And sometimes at that example I gave of that woman, she wants to go and work, but she cannot go to work because she's afraid to leave her young daughters at home because of the level of crime and, the kind of sexual violence in this country, and that's a reality. And we need to start putting more effort on finding solutions that are workable, that will allow people maybe to have a cottage industry, give them skill sets that I think years ago people did have, and then create maybe whatever product it is from the safety and sanctuary of their home, and then sell it to the whoever it is, and then it goes abroad and they get a share of it. Some way there's got to be an answer. The answer cannot be a mother so scared. I'm telling you, I witnessed it myself. I witnessed it myself. I witnessed it myself. A mother so scared to leave her child home, and all three children were for the same father, and the father had died, and all the windows broken, doors, she has only to lock up the house. How is she going to go and work in one of those fast food that not contributed to your foreign exchange? You have to remember those things, and then they make the foreign exchange. You think they're bringing it back to Trinidad? I have a feeling they're not coming back on our shores. But we have to start thinking just not of our own selves and our own, I wish to say pleasure, but our own family. Because sometimes we tend to think, well, my child good, my son good. But no, if the country not good, they're not good. Because guess what? Your child cannot go, or when they go out to that house and 8, 9 o'clock come and you didn't see them, you're frightened. I know that our mother. You're pacing up and down. Where are they? Why they're not answering the phone? When you have people coming in and breaking into your house more and more often, and then you feel the difference when you go abroad, you go to the United States, for example, and you almost feel the psychological weight lifted off of you because you don't have to, it's almost automatic. I don't know if I'm talking for other Trinbagonians when I say this. For those of you living in Dubai, living in Australia, living in the States, living in Canada, you probably know it better than I. Yes, if you're living in a rough neighborhood, you got to be careful. But if you're not living in a rough neighborhood, it comes almost like a knee-jerk thing, and people notice it in me, and I wasn't even aware that I did it because it was so built into me now. You come out your car, you check it just to make sure you lock your car. You walk in your house, you're checking to see before you go in, you're looking up and down the road to see if there's anybody in the road. You're going into your house, you're looking around to see. It's like a knee-jerk response. How are you supposed to live? Are you supposed to be living your life like that? People are not supposed to be living their lives like that. And that's what is happening in the economy. You can't just use it as inflation, GDP per capita, real GDP, and all of that. Yes, we have to break it down. Economists are critical because you cannot manage what you do not measure. And therefore, that's how you're able to start solving the problems and make people have a sense of freedom, that psychological freedom that we do not have in this country if we are being fair. And those who have it have guards. Ask them if they have their children go out without a guard because they can afford to do it. And they know why they have to have the guards anyhow. All right? They know why they have to have the guards anyhow. And they can afford to pay guards to take out the children. They're frightened to leave their children for somebody to drop their children in school because they can't trust people with their children. I mean, I'm not saying it was not there before, but there's something that tells me that it has become, country has lost its moral compass. And I am not preaching religion to anybody. I respect everybody's spiritual values because guess what? I didn't die and come back. So I have no story to tell anybody about what happens when you leave this earth. I have no story to tell you. But what I can say is that we are social beings, and as social beings, when affects one person, eventually it will affect you. It reminds me, as I say that, of I don't think I'll say it correctly, but I think you get the gist of it. Um, Unfortunately, I think it was said during Nazi Germany's time. Unfortunately, um, that's where the code would have originated. But the person was saying when, let's say, Mary Jane and whoever had problems, I said nothing. It's not my problem. Am I getting involved for? Is there a problem? When Jane had the problem, it still wasn't my problem. Same problem. When I had the problem, there was nobody there for me. So we all, when we have people like Dr. Hussain, Professor Dr. Hussain on the show, and other persons like that, I hope you see that we are trying on Hard Talk with a very, very committed David McIntyre. I say it every single time, and I do mean it. To really kind of bring home the what you will call it, not only the hard talk, but the facts, and so that we would put aside everything else, but our children and grandchildren, and make them our focus. And so David and I, because I knew I was not going to have Dr. Hussain on for the whole period, we did speak and we were talking about, of course, what is very topical and, of course, a matter of concern to the people of Trinidad and Tobago also, and that is the issue between Venezuela and Ghana. I don't know if you want to say anything, David, on that before I look up the Article 33 as we transition to that topic, which I think we must be interested in because we are interested in the Dragon Field, which has 4 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and we need natural gas for our LNG plants, and we need it for our downstream industry because we still are one what do you call it, a one horse show, and the one horse show is still energy. So I don't know if you want to have anything to say on that, David.
Well, a lot of people, it's on the lips of a lot of people also that they are concerned, first of all, as to whether some sort of a military confrontation will take place. I don't want to say war, will take place between the two countries, and what effect it will have on us as CARICOM brothers and sisters, or what effect it will have if that should happen, and what will pan out based on what you just said there, where these gas fields are concerned, because there are gas fields that are partly in Venezuelan maritime border lines and Trinidad border lines. So a lot of people are concerned about what can happen should that kind of confrontation start up between Venezuela and Guyana. A lot of people too are wondering about the Venezuelans who are here, and where that is concerned, I could separate goat from sheep in saying that a lot of Venezuelans who are here into the negative activities that can create problems. So if we are to side with Guyana as a CARICOM neighbor or partner or member, how it will pan out with these Venezuelans who are here, and if we are to show that we are not siding at all with Venezuela when it comes to that, how that will what it will eventually become from a negative point of view, in the sense that Venezuelans are Venezuelans, and even though they are here as migrants and looking to survive to help the families in Venezuela, how will that pan out? Would they get angry, or would they do things that would negatively affect us? So a lot of talk like that are on the ground where people are concerned. My personal concern is where we stand in the whole state of things. We are negotiating to have gas from Venezuela, if I'm to put it kind of frank, and I too am wondering if that kind of confrontation, or be it not military or not, if it ends up to some sort of a long dialogue that will hold back negotiations for us. I mean, when you think about the access to that gas, it has a lot of paperwork, it has a lot of bureaucracy, it has a lot of negotiations that will have to take place before it happens, even if the gas is available as of now. So that is my concern personally about the issue with Ghana and Venezuela.
Okay. Well, actually, whilst you was, for some reason, that's the law, whatever rule, the law that says what, there's some law, that whatever you want, the opposite will happen. So the opposite is happening to me, because every single time I would go on my phone, I would be able to pick up the Geneva Agreement of 1966, Article 4.
Mhm.
So to get straight to the point, the fact that there are so many Venezuelans in Trinidad,
Mhm.
it is because obviously things are hard for them there. So I would not look, I would be hard pressed to have a view of them that they, I mean, I can't, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would be hard pressed to feel that those who are still here are those who would be part of any kind of insurrection or whatever one wants to call it. But I think we need to step back a little bit. One, I'll go straight to the point. This point, um, Venezuela, in my respectful opinion, I may be proven wrong. I do not have a crystal ball, as I say. I'm not Justina Gonzalez. Maybe I should have on the show. She could help me. But all joking aside, I cannot see that Venezuela would want to get into any kind of war with Guyana. And the reason being, of course, they could outmaneuver Ghana in two twos. Ghana doesn't even have a population of 1 million. And
That's
even
right.
among the population of 1 million, about of 800 something thousand, a good number of them live in areas that are kind of like reserve areas where the persons, the original Guyanese, still live and have their own traditions and that are recognized in very much in the same way as it is in Belize. And so, in a way, they are not caught up in the. In matter of fact, one of the greater concerns is they're maintaining their way of life and ensuring that their timberlands are not destroyed and cleared in the name of progress.
Mhm.
So, and so from that point of view, Venezuela is known for its huge military force. In fact, when Guaido was announced by United States and other European countries, I think Trinidad is one of the few who did not in the OAS, I recognize Guaido as the president of Venezuela. They put maximum pressure, they call it. They put maximum pressure on Maduro to try to break him, and with the idea that with that kind of pressure, that eventually his government would collapse. And it would collapse because Venezuela has the largest known deposit of crude oil in the world, I believe, and the eighth largest known deposit of natural gas also in the world. Even I think it's only one country in the Middle East that has more than Ghana has in terms of oil. So Ghana is, and this is not only the oil, which is still important. The fossil fuels have not gone away. With all the talk, the fossil fuels have not gone away. Perhaps they're trying to take out more and more of the sulfur and the carbon to make it cleaner, but it has not gone away. And also, too, we have to remember that natural gas is also a feedstock to produce other products, including ammonia, methanol, urea, and those products are imported by United States of America. So, from what I will say about all this saber rattling, I call it, it's just that what I think happened. Let me just take it from the Venezuelan perspective. And I'm saying this not because that is my view, but I'm trained as a lawyer. And my training as a lawyer tells me, in all fairness, well, you all are the judge. The people of Trinidad and Tobago, the people in America, Canada, in Eastern Caribbean, wherever you are the persons who are going to make your own judgment. But you can't make a judgment without information. And I will say that I also have limited information, but I will share the limited information that I do have. And it comes from Reuters, it comes from a lot of the very respected international journalists. So that is my source of, and Bloomberg, etc. So number one, from the Venezuelan point of view, and that is from their vice president, what's the name? I had a name there all the time, and now it's just escaping me. Rodriguez. She has said that the Article 4, when the arbitral award was arrived at in 1899, and British Ghana was still a colony, when the borders were drawn up, and afterwards there was some bit of disagreement when Guyana became independent, but then it really came to a fore in 2015, actually 2013. I think they found out there was a lot of natural gas in the Essequibo, and the Essequibo region makes up 2/3 of what is Guyana and in the maritime waters. And it really took a turn in 2015 and became far more aggressive. And at that point in time, all during those years, one of the things to try to come to resolution, because Venezuela said they did not accept the decision about the borders that had been drawn up. And they then referred to the Article 33 of the Geneva Agreement, which I was looking for while I was talking to you. But I think I can kind of remember what it does say. What it does say is the parties, there's a mixed commission first that's going to try to resolve it, give them 4 years. If they can't resolve the issue, then they will hand it over to the parties to jointly agree, and that's important, jointly agree to an international forum for settling the dispute. If that does not pan out, then they will then refer the matter to the Secretary General of United Nations, who will refer to the Geneva Convention of Article 33 of the Geneva Convention, which sets out the mechanisms for dispute resolution. And there are many: arbitration, negotiation, and of course, going to court. What Delcy Gonzalez, on the behalf of the government of Ghana, is saying is, we never agreed to go to the ICJ. And if you read Article 4, it does say that the Secretary General shall decide the forum, and so on and so on. Now, why would you say and so on if once you made that decision, that's the end of the story? There's no and so on. I can't argue for that. I'm not their lawyer, but I feel the words and so on have a meaning. And it means that you are already contemplating that reference to the International Court of Justice, which is what the Secretary General recommended, did not mean the end of it, because first of all, there was no talk about joint agreement as they had earlier in Article 4. And after those words, they use the words and so on. And so on means that there's a possibility that we can continue this issue. So that's their first argument. Their second argument, so they're saying that they never agreed. The second argument, I'm just saying what they're saying. They are saying that when the arbitral award was drawn up in 1899, no one knew that there was gas and oil. As a matter of fact, we didn't even know that gas and oil was important. So that it could not have taken into account the limitations of the maritime boundaries between the two countries where a lot of the natural gas deposits are. So to use that arbitral award to draw the boundaries at a time when natural gas and oil were not in the equation at all and only came in the equation in 2015. Their argument is that that in itself shows that that boundary that was drawn up cannot be deemed to be the end of the story. The third argument, which they have used, with which I will agree I did international relations also. So from that perspective, I will have to agree with this part, that when Guyana went to the International Court of Justice and said, you ought to ignore and not give any credence to that referendum that Venezuela is holding on December the 3rd. I don't know if they had the right to do that, because in that referendum, it said the words non-binding referendum. Those words have a meaning. And to me, I think what Maduro was doing, I may be wrong, but I think what he was doing, he's concerned about whether he would be winning the elections come at the end of 2024. And referenda are often used as a means of testing the internal temperature of your electorate. And if they support you, it tends to show that you will have support when you ring that election bell. St. Vincent tried it. St. Kitts tried it. I think Grenada tried it with regard to going to the CCJ rather than Privy Council. It was not successful. And I think they felt that it was a disappointment to the leadership. So I think that referendum, which was clearly non-binding, which had 5 questions attached, where they talked about reclaiming, and Guyana says annexation, could not be seen, in my respectful view, not to be the right of of Venezuela to have a referendum. Every country has a right to have a referendum. And on that point, whether you agree that Guaido should or should have not been the president of Venezuela, as far as I'm aware, there has been no evidential proof that the elections, although there was a low turnout, and clearly there is dissatisfaction with Maduro and what is happening in Venezuela. It's very clear. You just have to of course, having all those sanctions against the country doesn't help. But be that as it may, it's a sovereign state, and you cannot, unless the sovereign state invites you in, you can't go in. It's like going into America to say what happened in Atlanta with those voting machines that apparently they said were rigged, which were not rigged, and there'd be a big lawsuit involving hundreds of millions of dollars. How dare any other country go in and say we come in there to restore democracy? So the fact of the matter is, as much as they were hoping that Guaido would get enough support from a very opposition that was far from united. The opposition, if you read up on it, you will see that there are some who are neo-socialist, some who are socialist, some who are liberal. They're not united, but they're united against Maduro. That's who they were united against. So the fact of the matter is that America could not go in there. And Guaido now, because he became the head of the National Assembly, that is the basis upon which they used to say he should be the president. You see, but you cannot, this is the thing about Maduro, and this is the scary thing for us too, to be frank with you. I mean, don't underestimate what Maduro is capable of doing, because what he did is he decided now to form the National Constituency Assembly. And when he did that, he took away all the lawmaking powers from the National Assembly, gave it to the National Constituency Assembly, which he had it. The persons on that assembly, the judges, were very pro-Maduro. So in that way, he made a eunuch out of Guaido. Do you hear about Guaido anymore? Not at all. And that is a scary thing, to be honest, that from our point of view with the Dragon Field, You never know. You never know. So the point is, having said that, of course, America could not go in. And they said maximum pressure, the military stayed with Maduro. They thought that they would have abandoned him. They did not abandon him. And that was the and talk done, as they say in Trinidad. So this new issue has put Trinidad in a very difficult position because the Dragon field has 4 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. They can produce per day, from my understanding, 200 to 300 million cubic feet per day. Now, Trinidad and Tobago, based on what the Prime Minister himself said in September 2019, he said that we need a minimum of 4.1 billion cubic feet per day in order to for the Atlantic, the trains, where it says 4, but we know it's 3, as well as the downstream industry. And at the time, it's either 2.7 or 2.8 billion cubic feet per day that we are producing. That is clearly not enough. So where are we to get that from? And that is why the Dragon field deal was so important to Trinidad and Tobago. So now what is going on now? I mean, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Dr. Gonzalez, who I love dearly, I know him, I've met him. I don't know him like a good friend, but I certainly know him through when I was in government and whatever my relationships I may have with St. Vincent. I do know him. And he is one of the most charming men you could meet and brilliant man. He was a lecturer at the university and all of that, and very much loved by his people. But Dr. Gonzalez was one of the governments in the CARICOM region that agreed to be part of the Petro-Caribe initiative of Venezuela, which was called by Manning and previously by Dr. Eric Williams, where it was called the Venezuelan Investment Fund, which is a little harder than the Petro-Caribe arrangement. But it was seen as an attempt by Venezuela to assert an imperialistic tendency over Central America and the Caribbean region. And they all jumped on that bandwagon because they got very preferential rates at which they could get their refined oil at very, very, very generous rates. And that is why Trinidad and Barbados were the only two that did not. And that is where the Petroleum Fund started. And ironically, the reason why I've said all of that is because Dr. Gonzalez has said, and I have said it on this show already, that his first 100 million US dollars to start his airport in Argyle, I think it's in Argyle it is, I've been there once or twice in an event. His first 100 million US came from our petroleum fund. So, the irony of the situation does not escape me that he is taking on the role, and I'm glad he's doing it, but, all of this is theater, that's what I think is theater. However, at the same time, I think Venezuela has found themselves in a kind of a position because after making all that hard talk, gangster talk, you know what I mean? After talking all that talk, people want to see you do something. I mean, Thatcher, it's safe Thatcher, Thatcher was about to lose her seat as prime minister, and there came the Falklands crisis. Labour, Tory, they forget who vexed with who. We have one common enemy. So he used that common enemy theory, which I can't give the other example because it's such an awful one, but there are another example which people can think of, where you get a common enemy that people all hate for one reason or the other, and they unite against that common enemy. And that is a theory in politics that has been tried and proven. So now I read today that he's saying wants to start exploration just on the border with the border as they stand today. as it stands today, with Guyana and Venezuela to start exploration. I mean, if that's not poking the bear, I don't know what it is. So he's obviously trying to probably keeping his promise to his people, trying to keep the idea of he's the big bad wolf, and also to provoke Guyana. And America now has its planes and all of that flying around, but you can't go into Venezuela unless Venezuela, their reason would be, as they have said it, is ExxonMobil has huge investments in Guyana, significant hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investments in Guyana, and therefore they are going to go there to protect the interests of American interests. But as long as Venezuela does not go into the current border that has been drawn up, as close as it may come, I don't think that America, especially after Afghanistan, the amount of licks Biden got for that whole withdrawal out of Afghanistan, the sour taste in the American people for fighting proxy wars all over the world and losing their young children. I'm not sure that they want to get into war with Venezuela, and Venezuela definitely don't want to get into a war because they're not in a position to do that. The last data that I did see, which again I am subject to being corrected, but I have to rely on the most up-to-date data that I can find from respectable sources. Whilst Iran is supposed to be in Venezuela rehabilitating their largest refinery, they're still not producing the level of barrels of oil, refined oil per day that they thought they would have reached by now. It has not reached near there, so they're still having a lot of difficulties. A second point that I think I need to make is this, that perhaps I didn't recognize it before. With PDVSA, somebody tells me I'm pronouncing it wrong, and I'm sure I am. So I'm open to someone.
PDVSA. People say PDVSA.
PDVSA. Okay, PDVSA. Okay, I will try my best to say that. PDVSA. PDVSA. The primary sanctions that Biden has put on PDVSA are in relation to oil, because once PDVSA has more than 50% ownership in any oil company, that is where the primary sanctions are applicable. There are secondary sanctions, but those secondary sanctions apply to companies in which PDVSA has less than 50% shareholding, which is in a natural gas entity. But the reality is a lot of countries understandably are very skittish about even trying their luck with that, because if Trump comes back, if Trump comes back and we can't discount it, any kind of rapprochement that has been achieved is definitely going to be set back, I believe. But in any event, Venezuela is not in a good position because its money is locked up abroad. It does not have access to its billions of US abroad. And so they are hard-pressed to want to get themselves into a war with anybody, especially the United States of America, which I don't have any proof, and I love America. Remember, America, I love you. But I will say that America won't mind getting inside there.
Yes. Stick up in right there, Karen. I have a call on the line. Good afternoon, caller. Mm-hmm. Hello? Caller, are you there? Okay, seems like I lost that one. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I wanted to get to this point, though, because I don't want the Minister of Energy or the Prime Minister to say that behind the curveball. And I will be behind the curveball because there's something called NDA, non-disclosure, which I understand you have that. But what has been announced, and to the credit of the government, I will say, to the credit of the government, what has happened is they have obviously restructured the LNG trains into one consortium. So there's no 4 trains, there's just one. Now, having said there's only one, Shell and BPTT say we don't want nothing in train number 1. You're not putting any money. I wonder why. Go figure out why. Well, we aren't going to go into why they're not putting any money in train 1. The Chinese have come out. NGC has been given a larger equity share in this one restructured consortium. And so there's more investment opportunity and therefore more shareholding and profit opportunity, because I think we will have now, we have a larger share than we had before. And we also be more involved in the marketing and sale of the natural gas of this one consortium. So that is good news. The other good part of it is, which I think is the bigger part, which I think had a lot to do with the fact it still has not happened. The final decision with Manatee, with Shell, to go ahead with the exploration and monetization of the natural gas in the Manatee field, which is on the Trinidad side, as opposed to the Lawrence side, which has 70% of trillions of cubic feet of natural gas, much more than we have on our side. What they've agreed to is to allow third parties, that is Shell and BPTT, who are still the main shareholders, to allow third parties to provide them with natural gas. And understand, I said, remember, where they're getting it from? Well, yes, they're getting it, one, from Woodside, which used to be owned by BHP. That's an Australian company. They're getting it also from stranded gas between Venezuela and Trinidad. They will also, that's my understanding anyhow. Also, the Hibiscus platform, where the pipeline was going to come from Guira. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct, or Guiria. What's how you pronounce it?
Guiria.
Okay, thank you. Guiria. You know, it like to tell me hola, you know, so I feel you did a lot of Spanish, you know.
I like
Anyhow,
Spanish.
yeah, I feel so, you know. Guiria. There's already a pipeline there that takes natural gas, a small one that takes natural gas to Venezuela for their domestic use. And Venezuela is saying, let's build another pipeline. It won't be as long as the one you all have in mind, that we will then do what has to be done to the natural gas in Venezuela and then transport how much percent down to 0.14 and 20%, whatever percent to the police. But you know, I don't think anybody going with that. I feel like going with that. I feel like taking that chance. Taking that chance with them. But to get to the question where the gas is coming from, where it really, really, really is going to be coming from is from Touchstone. I had the figures in front of me. It is really very impressive. And they have, I guess that's why all these years, this arrangement has been on the back burner. We haven't been hearing that much. But from Touchstone on the land, it's not in the sea, on land. Oh, but I want to get the right figure, you know, because I keep mixing the 3 and the 5. No, I think I have it here. I wrote it down somewhere. The gas from Touchstone is 381 billion cubic feet of natural gas on land in Touchstone. And the arrangement is 80% interest. Touchstone is a Canadian company, and 20% participation by Heritage, which is, of course, our company. Now, having said it has so much gas, that is a lot of gas, they are, at this point in time, going to be able to produce 200 to 300 million cubic feet. Now, remember, million is not a billion. So when you take the Dragon field, we take the Manatee, we take all the other, the stranded gas that I mentioned, the Woodside, and of course the Touchstone, which is the big player. It seems that we have a lot of natural gas available, but per day requirement is not going to be met. That is my understanding. And I'm sure the minister will correct me. But minister, I'm not in the government, and I'm not seeing any documents. So what I say is going to be based on the information that is made available us on the outside. But what I am saying is that was, I think, the major game changer to allow a third party act to be able to provide BPTT and Shell, who are the major shareholders in the LNG business, to provide them with natural gas. And I assume that major player has to be Touchstone as well as Dragonfield. So when it comes to Dragonfield, Trinidad cannot say they're not getting involved, because if America involved, Trinidad involved. Come on, stop it. This is a CARICOM country. You're a member of CARICOM. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I understand you are the government. I mean, if I win the government, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. But the reality is that, of course, you have taken a position, but you have to, because you're a member of CARICOM. But they wanted to. I heard they were talking about trying to get gas out of Suriname, but they have to pass through Guyana. And we were so nice to Guyana in the past, eh? Remember that. I mean, Dr. Ali has said some kind of unkind things himself. I mean, you can look at it as being unkind when he says, we don't want your refinery. We only need one, and we're getting it from Dominican Republic. We don't want your LNG trains because they're too old. And to take gas from Kaita or wherever it is, the pipeline is too costly. So that's not a good, that doesn't sound a good message. And CARICOM is now looking at its energy policy, rewriting its energy policy. And the gentleman who was responsible for that, whose name I have written somewhere, has said that was supposed to have been completed within the last few years, but it's not going to be completed for another at least 10 years. So to answer the questions that you have asked, I do not have a crystal ball. I cannot see around the corner. I don't even say Justina Gonzalez because she's got it wrong. Got it wrong a couple of times. Yeah. What I will say is this, that there's a lot of saber rattling. I cannot see that Venezuela would enter into a war with Guyana. It has much more to lose, because just as what's happening in, I don't even like to talk about it. I don't even watch the news on it. And don't ask me my opinion, I won't give it. What's happening with Hamas and Israel, that should be a lesson to you. So Israel mightn't be big, but America is big. So if America is on Ghana's side, and Ghana is a CARICOM country, and if we are building up CARICOM to the future and looking at the opportunities, there is already an LNG plant in place. I think it's in place in Trinidad, but it's Guyanese own. I might be mistaken. And there's also an agro-processing company called Novo. Again, because Ghana has land cardon. So I think our future lies, honestly, with CARICOM and with our CARICOM neighbors. And I think that the government, through the minister and the prime minister, have in the process of striking some sort of deal in which the Biden's condition that Maduro have free and fair election as a condition for him to allow us to buy gas with money rather than in kind, I think it's losing ground, because I think they are finding other ways around getting Venezuela money by making them joint partners. Not only Trinidad, the European Union, it's not us by ourselves, The European Union won the natural gas with all that Ukraine war. Yeah. So I think that what we're seeing now is that there will be no war, that Dr. Gonzalez, good for him, make himself a little bit of a hero. Mia Motley must get too much hero worship. Yeah, I got a little bit. Yeah, I got a little bit of the action. Prime Minister Rowley, you make too much, in my respectful opinion, too outspoken. Talk before you think. Maybe I talk before I think, but I'm not a prime minister. Okay? And I'm not in government. Okay? All right? So what I say as a private citizen is not the same thing as what you say as prime minister. So I telling you what you say as prime minister and what your ministers say as ministers, it can be very detrimental to our foreign affairs. and to our relationship, the geopolitics of this country and of this world. So you need to be more careful and more mindful of what you say and how you say it, because you do not have a crystal ball. And as you are already seeing, the big player now is Guyana. That's the player. Maybe you didn't know that 10 years ago. I didn't know that 10 years ago. Now you know they are the big player. They are the big player. So no war could move to enter this. By the way, that arrangement with Touch Tunis is 2020. That's what also has been considered. That's the final thing I would have to say, is that with all that positive news, and I think I discussed maybe about, I don't know, I just saying based on what I read, Mr. Minister, I am not in your government. I am not a member of your staff. I am on the outside. Okay? Right. Could you imagine if I was on the inside? If I was on the inside, could you imagine? Well, I'm not. And I don't try to get information other than from the sources which I have quoted. But what my real concern is, we need 4.1 cubic feet to keep us going. All that gas from hibiscus, cassia compression, and all these other different sources, just not enough to hold us through. And this government has failed us time and time again in two ways, and I make no apologies over it. For whatever their reasons are, I can guess, and I know they know I can guess. And I feel without having Yesenia Gonzalez on your side, I feel you know that I know why, or have a good reason why I know why, which I am going to say because I don't want anybody suing me. But I want to say that two major things, and you have to wonder if it is by design or just complete incompetence. Both bad. The first one goes to. It is the lack of implementation and the lack of finding other avenues for foreign exchange when you yourself know and say time and time again, every time your minister goes to give his speech on budget day, we hear a one word they have to say, I must look at, I'm sure I'll find the word volatility of the energy. Right. So if you know that already, why haven't you done like Dubai? Why haven't you done like Mauritius? Why haven't you done like Singapore? Why haven't you done like Jamaica? Yes, somebody pulled me up from using Jamaica because I said that they did get an extended facility thing from the IMF, but the IMF didn't dictate to them what to do. The IMF was there as very much because they learned their lessons from Manly days when they wanted to throw down the gauntlet and it did not work out. So they learned their lessons. So don't use that as a reason why I cannot use that as an example. Greece went to the IMF. A lot of European countries, 5 of them ran to the IMF in 2008, okay? So, but the difference is that the people of Jamaica, not the government, the opposition, the trade union, everybody wanted it. It was something they wanted. It was not forced on them. It was something they welcomed, and it helped them. And it has helped them with the tourism sector. I could just give you just a figure. They have over 154,000 people directly involved in tourism in
Jamaica.
In Jamaica, and I think about 354 indirectly. And it also impacts the insurance, financing, and manufacturing in a big, big way. And if you want to tell me, which I know you can say, and it's a good point, them have crime. But guess what? There, as you know, anybody who in Jamaica knows where is the tourism. But they have a bigger country, a bigger population. But where is their tourism? It's on the North Coast. Yeah. And when you're flying from Miami or wherever you're flying, you don't flying into you don't flying in Kingston, you know. You're flying to Montego Bay. You are ring fenced from the crime in Jamaica. Yeah. So that is the benefit that they have. So what I would say is this government has failed us over the last 2 terms failing to put in place other streams of foreign exchange. I will quote from the man from Dubai when he said in 1969, they found under the sand, they found oil. By the way, before that, they used to rely on the pearls. But when they discovered the cultured pearls in Japan at the turn of the last century, people used to lose their lives diving for pearls. There were people literally starving in that Dubai, literally starving. And do you know what he did? He recognized that he had to do something for future generations. Did he wait until the oil ran out or nearly ran out? No. We have a large international financial center, etc., etc. We all know what Dubai is. But you know what he said? And I'll end with that. That is the kind of thing that our government and our prime minister and his leadership not only do not implement, but fail to give us other streams of foreign exchange. And that is why we are in the position we are, that we are in 17 point something negative growth in this country. You know what he said? My grandfather rode a camel. My father rode a camel. I ride a Mercedes. My son drives a Land Rover. His son will drive a Land Rover. But you know what his son will be driving, if I didn't do what I did? His son will be riding a camel. And that is what this government wants us to do, ride camels. And with that, I say good evening to all of you. Thank you for listening. And thank you to Professor Dr. Roger Hussain. Congratulations. And David, as usual, for your usual support. It was great being here with you. And salutations to all our listeners.
Yes.
I heard you.
Yes.
And I apologize from last week if I'm not going to say if I don't like people to say if. I didn't do it. I will accept that I did not do it. And therefore, my apologies and salutations to you.
Yes.
And have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Enjoy the rest of your evening also.
Thank you. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes. That's it for today's edition of Hard Talk, Power 102 Digital